What's up, cooks? Welcome to the Garch Kitchen. I am the Garch Chef, and today we are cooking up the next top 10 decks of the week. This week we're doing it a little bit differently. What we're doing is we're doing all decks that did make tops in tournaments this week, except there are a whole bunch of spicy builds. Not many of these actually won tournaments. In fact, I'm not going to talk about any tournaments that really won tournaments this week, except for the exception of one or two. But we're not actually looking at the top 10 best decks in the game. We're looking at top 10 decks of the week, the spiciest builds that I've seen make tops this week. So let's get right into it. And so basically the first deck that we're going to look at is a Gallade deck. This Gallade deck's pretty cool. First of all, Gallade, for those that don't know, basically is like an Alakazam or an Exeggutor from Mythical Island, or a Jinx, where it gets more attack based on the amount of energies attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. And then you mix in, because it's a fight-in type, we mix in Lucarios, which is really, really strong, giving it an additional 20 or 40 damage. And then also, we're adding in a 2 Hitmonlee and 1 Marshadow. So when I was first looking at this deck, I was like, you know what, I don't really know if I would be playing 2 Hitmonlee. I usually like the 1/1 Hitmonlee Marshadow, but then when you think about it, like, this deck has no real early game attacker. Like, it doesn't. It only has Hitmonlee, so you do kind of need either a Hitmonchan, a Farfetch'd, and you're not going to play Farfetch'd because you're playing Lucario, so you either need a Hitmonchan or the second Hitmonlee. So I do kind of agree with it. But I also do like, if we are going to be playing like a double Hitmonlee, that we're going to be playing maybe 2 Cyrus. Like, that's where I would go. By the way, just so you all know, like, they're playing 1 X-Speed and 2 Pokeball. So again, this deck is really cool. What place did it get? Let me pull up my thing here. I can tell you right now the exact position this deck got. And it was, I believe, 24th or 25th. Okay, it doesn't tell me. No, because it got a ton of tops, actually. You got a ton of multiple tops. And this deck right now, Gallade, Lucario, I believe it's considered, is running like a 49% win rate. So almost a 50%. So this deck, I do believe, going forward, will continue to increase its win rate, because it has the power of Lucario, and then it has the upside of the Alakazam kind of style of deck. And there is still a ton of decks playing a lot of energy. However, some of the best decks right now are like Exeggutor decks that don't play a lot of energies. So that is going to have a tough time against those decks. But let's move on. What we're going to do is I'm going to open up the next deck here. Why can't I just find exactly what I want? Here we go. So we're going to move on. We're going to pick the next deck, and the next deck is Luxray Volkner. So Luxray Electivire. I never thought I would actually see this deck in a tournament as a top. However, it got 24th, and it's currently running a 49% win rate as well. So, like, this deck actually surprisingly doing not so bad. Again, next week we're probably only going to be looking at decks with a minimum of 50% win rate or higher, and then how well those decks are doing in the tournaments and tournament winners and stuff like that. But this got 24th place, so it got a top 32, and it's like a full-on Volkner deck. Now, I've built a Luxray deck and a Electivire deck, but I did Luxray with Zebstrika, and I did Electivire with Magnezone. So go check out those if you want to see them and how they play out. And of course, people are going to want to play these cards together, but I actually don't think they work all that well together, to be honest. Because yes, your Luxray, once it's loaded up, it discards all, and then you can take all those energies basically and put them onto your Electivire with your Volkner. But you, like, how do I explain it? Like, you're playing a stage 2, so either you have to get all the energy on your stage 2 first, and then discard it, and then bring your Electivire in. I just think these guys have better partners, is basically what I'm trying to say. I think they have way better partners than themselves, even though they both work with Volkner. So I think you really want to do that split. This player is only playing one Electivire, and I guess I'm not even sure why exactly. I guess they want to be able to increase their chances of Pokemon communications by playing less Pokemon, maybe. I'm not so sure. They are playing 2 Rocky Helmet and 1 Giant Cape. So the Giant Capes I thought would be higher than the Rocky Helmets so that you can get a little bit more HP, because you're only, 130, 120 on your respective big guys. So I wonder, like, what the thought process there was. Maybe they want to get those breakpoints. But again, I think Luxray, and I'm not saying I built the best version of Luxray, like, don't get me wrong, but I built it with Zebstrika because you could just snipe everything all the time, right? Like, you can snipe something with Zebstrika early on, leave it there, then choose to start sniping something else with your Zebstrika because you've already put it in range for when your Luxray comes online, right? So I don't know if the Rocky Helmets really help you get into range because you're only doing 120 basically max with both of these Pokemon in Luxray and Electivire. The Rocky Helmets are going to help. They are going to help a little bit because 140, there is a lot of 140s, but a lot of 140s are also playing Giant Capes. So I don't really see the Rocky Helmets being more valuable, is what the word I'm looking for, than the Giant Capes. So anyways, the next deck we are going to look at is the deck here, and here we go. This is the new deck on the block, okay? Magnezone Hitmonlee seems to be one of the best decks in the game now. Last week, it was Darkrai Magnezone. Now, again, it's only been 1 week, and last week, Magnezone Darkrai was the big deck of last week. It's still doing really, really good this week, by the way. It's still like the number 1 deck, basically, for all intents and purposes, or at least top 3. Like, it's super duper good. But this one's kind of come up in its place a little bit. It has a 3% meta share. It has a 56% win rate. And it's had a couple of win-in tournaments. And in one tournament, I think it was the Monday Meta tournament, first and second place. So this is a brand new deck. Nobody expected it, or maybe some people did, and it just kind of came in. It's a single price deck. It plays the tech box, Hitmonlee, Marshadow kind of build inside of the Magnezone, because really Magnezone is being played in like every single deck, let's be honest. There's even an additional one on this list, but I've seen it played with Exeggutor. I've seen it played with Yanmega. I've seen it played with, obviously, Darkrai. I've seen it played with other electric Pokemon, and now we're going to see it with another Pokemon I'll get into soon. But this deck is really cool. First of all, for a couple of reasons. One, I love the Marshadow Hitmonlee tech box. I think that is already one of the best packages in the game. And then when you have Magnezone as being one of the best cards in the game, mixed in with that package, one of the best packages, it makes it one of the best decks. I don't know if I'd be playing Hitmonchan, because this deck is really good against... I understand because this deck is really good against other Magnezone decks, being able to try and knock out that Magnemite early on before it gets into Magneton and starts ramping energy like crazy. However, as much Magnezone as there is out there, just in case for your other matchups, I wonder if it's almost just better to play a Farfetch'd in place of the Hitmonchan, especially if you're only going to be playing one anyways. I'm guessing... I don't know. It has more HP and it does hit for weakness, but you're not playing Lucario, right? So I think I would still like to play the Farfetch'd instead. And then even if it gets knocked out, because it has less HP, well, guess what? You have a Marshadow to follow up with. So really cool deck. And honestly, I think this deck probably shows that as strong as Lucario is, Marshadow probably just doesn't need Lucario. Like, maybe even though Lucario makes fighting decks so much better, maybe the older builds without Lucario are actually just still better, or are still just as good and don't need the Lucario, and maybe Lucario actually just fills the deck up and wastes spots instead. Because obviously this deck, now again, this deck is completely different. You're playing Magnezone. If you knock out something with your Marshadow gets knocked out, you have another 110 tacker on board, ready to go with Magnezone because your Magneton gets to ramp free energy, right? So completely different, but still, maybe it's just something to think about, right? So, but I actually think so next week, by the way, what we're going to do is this week we're looking at like spicy top decks. that or spicy versions of decks that got tops in tournaments, and that's the kind of criteria I wanted to look at this week. Next week, we're going to get back to the standard, which are the best decks in the format, which ones are winning tournaments, how many tournaments are they winning, what are their win rates, what are their best matchups, their play rate, and all that kind of stuff. We're going to get into I'm going to bring out back the pie charts and all that stuff. But this week, I just really wanted to look at Spice. It's only week 2, and like I said, it's going to take about 3 weeks to really get an idea of where the meta really is. So next week, or at the end of this week, as of recording, I want to see if the Darkrai Magnezone is still the best, if this deck's the new best deck, how strong are grass decks still super duper strong? Because grass decks right now are insanely strong. They're winning all the tournaments. They're winning. They have a ton of tops. They're winning. They just won. They got, I think, top 4. There was 3 in the top 4 in the Ursi Day or something like that. And then a ton of top-ins from Celebi and Exeggutor without Superior, by the way. We're going to see one of their decks, actually. So maybe we'll just get into it now. Or we'll get into it soon because I don't really get to choose the order here. I mean, I do, but I don't. Okay, here's the other Magnezone deck, right? So the Magnezone deck with Starmie EX. So this is super cool. So for one, you get to just attack with Starmie EX way early on because it only requires 2 energy. And so you get to accumulate like 1 or 2 free prizes from your Starmie EX by just being super duper aggressive. And then even if it gets knocked out, you have a Magnezone to follow up with, right? Or what you can do is before it gets knocked out, the Starmie, you can just retreat it for free and then bring in the Magnezone, which is why I'm actually kind of surprised that we're not playing Dawns. Like, why aren't we playing Dawns? We are playing 3 Gust cards. Do we really need 3 Gust cards? Although I will say it is a common trend right now that I'm constantly seeing more than 2 Gust cards in one deck. Maybe that's the way the meta's pushing into because we're super duper aggressive in our decks right now, that are very aggressive decks can afford to play more than 2 Gust cards because, first of all, either they have the space in the deck or they make the space because you're forcing so many retreats by being so aggressive and putting out so much damage early on that you're able to kind of abuse Cyrus and Sabrina to the fullest effect. Because you have all the aggro decks being played in, right? So this deck's actually really cool, and this deck, I don't think there's only one player that plays this. I think there's a couple, but the play rate is like a 0.10, so a 10%, a 0.1% play rate. Sorry, is what I'm trying to say. Excuse me. But it does have a 61% win rate. And so I think like any deck that plays Magnezone is probably going to have like a decent win rate, at least for a bit. But then once a ton of players pick up a deck, it might just go back down in play rate. But super duper aggressive, super cool. But again, I definitely think Dawns fit in this super duper well. Because yes, Magneton ramps a ton of free energy on itself. But if you don't have enough, or if you want to make sure you have an additional attack set up, or you want to attack even earlier with your Magnezone, you can retreat your Starmie for free and then take an energy from it with Dawn and put it on your Magnezone, and then your Starmie's only now, because it Dawn went away, is only 1 energy away of being reloaded up, right? So I think Dawns would fit in this really, really well, and I would love to see if this deck actually gets picked up and start played more in other tournaments, and just see how it does. This guy only got 26th place, with that being said, so there is that. But this is the next deck. Speaking of Lucario, we were just talking about Lucario before in the Magnezone deck, or not being in the Magnezone deck, but maybe Lucario is not necessary. However, this is one of my favorite decks right now. It's the Lucario, Hitmonchan, Hitmonlee, Marshadow deck. I just did this deck on my channel. Go check it out. It's not this exact build. Again, this build is playing, again, aggressive decks really want to be playing a ton of Gust cards. I think I'm only playing 2 Cyrus, and I think I feel pretty comfortable playing 2. And I'm replacing the Serenas with 2 Giovannis. These are 2 Pokeballs and 2 X-Speed, by the way, which I also play in my deck. Obviously, I play X-Speeds. Everyone's playing Pokeball and Professor's Research. But the Sabrinas, I replaced the Sabrinas with Giovanni's, and 1 of the 2 Hitmonlee and 1 of the 2 Marshadow I replaced with Rocky Helmets to get even more damage output with my Lucario and my Giovanni's. Now, this player went The went and placed, where's the thing here? 29th. So still a top 32. Only runs around a 49% win rate right now. Lucario Himoli decks. However, I do think this deck is actually really strong. I did think when you're able to attack in this early with a ton of aggression and with this many Gust cards, you're able, like I just said, you're able to just put in so much damage early on that you're forcing retreats, and then you're bringing them back out with all your Gust cards, finishing them off, and then who cares if you have such low... if you're not playing Giant Capes, like people would want to put Giant Capes in this, I don't agree. Because even if you get knocked out, guess what? You have a Marshadow to follow up with. Knock them out with your Marshadow. And this is a single price deck. You have to go through 3 of your Pokemon. So you have a pretty high chance of aggroing any of your opponents and what they're playing anyways. But let's move on. I want to make sure that... no, I already looked at that deck. Sorry. This is the one we just looked at. I just want to make sure I didn't skip over anything. Okay. We got this one. So Garchomp. So Garchomp here, 1 communication, 1 Giant Cape under here. And it's 2 Garchomp lines, 2 Farfetch, 1 Marshadow, 1 Himoli. So again, Himoli, Marshadow still being teched into so many decks, right? This has been teched in since they came out. Since Marshadow came out, basically. These 2 cards have been teched into a ton of different decks. 10 of different decks, and it's really cool because 1, you can start the game off with Farfetch, put a ton of pressure on your opponent, and then bring in a Garchomp after you even just 1 attack from your Farfetch. Bring in the Garchomp and then finish off whatever your Farfetch attacked into, right? If it's a big EX, 100 plus 40 is 140, or 150 plus 140 because of the Cynthia is 190. So that is already a good Farfetch into Garchomp is really good. Or what you can do is you can bring in a Garchomp, do 150 to a big EX, and now it has only like 30 HP or less. If you force a retreat, forget the Cyrus. What you do is you bring in a Himoli, and then you knock out their Pokemon on the board. And then even if they bring a Pokemon out and knock out your Himoli, who cares? You can now bring your Garchomp back in and then knock it out with another Cynthia, or even a Marshadow. And so Marshadow fits in this really well as well, because it's basically it's 1 fight and 1 colorless, so you could still put the water energy on it just like you put a water and fight in on your Garchomp. Fits really well. I've seen a bunch of people play Manaphy. I think when I build the deck, I'm probably going to put a Manaphy in it as well, just because I feel like just to increase the consistency just a little bit, I'll probably put a Manaphy in it. But for tournament, I think that I agree. You just want to be aggressive. You want to be able to make sure you set yourself up to knock out anything you can with a Garchomp once it's in. And your Farfetch and your Himoli allow you to do that. So really, really good. We're going to move on. We are going to go to here. And this deck, oh my god, I can't believe Venusaur made a recent top. It got actually 6th place, and 6th place is really good. And overall, right now, Venusaur decks are only really running like these Venusaur. I think it's Venusaur Shaman. It's only running like a 48% win rate. But this player decided to play 1 Kangaskhan to be that early game tank while you set up for your Venusaur, and I really like that idea. I wonder if we would almost want to play a Druddigon instead. And if not, maybe just get the early game Kangaskhan. Because as you can see, this deck is not playing Leafs. So your Kangaskhan, once it's in the front, it's going there to basically get knocked out eventually. So maybe you're trying to get as much early game damage with your coin flips on the Dizzy Punch. But maybe you're better off just, playing a Druddigon instead. I don't really know. Because again, it's not playing Leaf. Maybe we don't want to play Leafs in this deck. Maybe we do, and if we do, then we put the Druddigon in instead of the Kangaskhan. I'm not really 100% sure, and I think it's playing 1 Rocky Helmet, 1 communication. I definitely think you probably want 2 communications in a deck like this. Maybe... And then you also want Giant Capes instead of Rocky Helmets, right? So I don't know, man. It's really tough. Wow. I'm trying to think of how I would build this deck, because I actually do want to build this deck. I've been currently working on the deck that I have for Venusaur Shaman, and I do want some type of tank, because I don't think your Venusaur line or your Shamans will stay online long enough before you get into the Venusaur and get your actual strategy going. So I do think you need a tank, but I definitely would pick Giant Cape over a helmet. And then, or at least I would pick Giant Capes over the potions to give me more overall HP. And then I'd probably choose between Kangaskhan and or Druddigon for my tank. Although, you know what would be really good too? Giratina might actually be a really good tank in this deck. Because you put Giratina out there, and you put 1 energy on it when it's ready to retreat, and it gets free retreat, right? So you just leave it there. You're going to waste an energy on... not waste, but put an energy on Kangaskhan anyways. You might as well make it Giratina. You won't do any damage. Like, Kangaskhan might do some damage, it might not. But at least you're not, like, guaranteeing a free prize to your opponent. I never like doing that. Giving your opponent free prizes never feels good. Unless you're in a situation where, like, okay, at least if you knock me out, I have something set up. But just making the decision to just be like, you know what, anytime I ever have Kangaskhan, he's going to get knocked out, and I'm okay with it. I don't like that kind of strategy. I don't like that kind of thinking when I build my decks. I think it's a bad way of thinking. Having a 3 retreat Pokemon in the front without a way to get it out is a really bad idea, in my opinion. But anyways, that's just me. We're going to move on, though. That was deck... Was that... Yeah, exact same deck. So I got 3 more decks left. We're going to look at them real quickly here. So this is the new Exeggutor Celebi deck that's doing really good. It was played last season or last format in Mythical Island, except this version of the deck did not do as well as Exeggutor EX, Celebi EX, and Superior. Now it's doing way better. And yes, it could be due to a couple of things. Maybe the item cards, maybe the communications, maybe it's Cyrus. It could be all that stuff. But the real reason is, in my opinion, is that the superior decks are just way too slow. And they're way too slow for a Pokemon that you want to get online. That once it gets online only has 130 HP. So by the time you get a superior online, the other decks you're playing are just doing more stuff. They're being way more aggressive. They're filling their decks with things that they need to kind of allow their deck to do better. But Superior, again, is just way too slow. It's just way too slow right now. And yes, you get to do a ton more flips with your Celebi EX. But, like I said, unlike a deck like Charizard, who takes just as long to get online, once it's online, guess what? It has 180 HP, possibly 200 HP with the Giant Cape, and then it's doing 200 damage guaranteed. Whereas Celebi EX is not doing the guaranteed damage and only has 130. Even if it could heal from Erica, it doesn't really matter when a lot of things can just one-shot it anyways. So honestly, these decks, the way they're built now, is you're putting a ton of damage in with your Exeggutor before you even decide to bring in your Exeggutor EX. So you're doing all that, and honestly, this version I have here actually won a tournament. But some of the best versions that I see actually play more than 2 Gust cards. So either 2 Sabrina and 1 Cyrus, or 2 Cyrus and 1 Sabrina. And it's because you have so much room in this deck. Because either one, you're playing 1 Celebi, 1 Mew, or just 2 Celebi, or 1 Celebi with, obviously the Exeggutor EX are always in the deck. But you have so much space for trainer cards in this. Tons of supporters, tons of item cards, tons of tools, whatever you want, whatever floats your boat. But this deck is super duper strong because your Exeggutor is super high health. If you have Giant Capes, it's 180. It stays online forever. You heal. Possibly get a couple of knockouts, and then you play all your Gust cards, force everything out into the active, can finish people off, and then you finally bring in your Celebi or your Mew EX to just finish the game off. But the superior builds, I just don't think are fast enough. Decks are just way too fast, way too aggressive, and way too strong right now. You cannot have superior, like, bulking up your deck, stopping you from getting into your important trainers, or trainers stopping you from getting into your other Pokemon. So, in fact, if you don't believe me, go to playlimitlesstcg.com, click on decks, choose Pokemon TCG Pocket, make sure it's standard format, make sure it's based on SmackDown, go look at Celebi EX and Celebi EX and Superior, and it's like a 30% win rate or something. It's way lower than it was last season, and last season was one of the best decks. So, yeah, it's obviously superior, right, is the issue. Even though it makes your Celebi EX super strong, it's obviously just not as strong as you want it to be. Sorry, trying to get into the next deck here. And then second to last deck, Lickilicky. This is super cool. I'm so happy Lickilicky EX made it into a top. So it actually got, let me look here, 9th and 5th place. So it got 2 tops this week in very big tournaments. With obviously Dialga EX, Lickilicky, and then 1 Mew. It's doing a 1-1 item or a 1-1 tool card split between Capes and Rocky Helmets. So 1 Rocky Helmet, 1 Cape, 1 Cyrus, and 1 Sabrina. So I actually do kind of like the split sometimes of Sabrina and Cyrus. And I don't really like the split of Cape and Helmet because for me it's like you either want one or the other. Like you don't want both. You know, unless you're playing 2 of each, like pick a link. Right? Like, do you want the breakpoints or do you want the extra health? Like, that's just the way I am. It's just the way my brain works. I don't know if everybody else agrees with me on that, but Lickilicky is super cool. I actually think this card's really strong. And honestly, I think coin flip cards will actually just get better as time goes on because I bet you eventually coin flip effects are actually going to get support in the future. We actually have support in the TCG or have had support in the TCG. The unfortunate thing for coin flips, I mean, other than just being RNG, is that actually a lot of the coin flip cards in the game right now, a lot of them are like kind of good. Like that's the issue. Like Celebi EX, super good coin flip card. Exeggutor EX, super good coin flip card. And now Lickilicky is pretty strong. Like if the coins go right and like they go right, or put it this way, it's worth playing even if it goes wrong because the base damage is you're okay with the base damage if the ceiling damage doesn't hit where you want it to hit, right? So basically, 100 damage for 4 energy, not great, but your Dialga EX is doing that anyways. So you're kind of okay with it because this deck kind of has that baseline, right? But for 1 heads with no tails at all, 140, then possibly 180 if 2 heads, right? So like you're banking on the ceiling, but even if it doesn't hit, you're still okay with it. Whereas in something like a Marowak, if your base damage is 0, that kind of sucks, right? So coin flips are actually kind of in a good position right now. A lot of good coin flip cards like Lickilicky, Exeggutor EX, Pikachu EX, like they're all doing kind of good. You know, Moltres has always done kind of good. It's always been there. Even though it's a coin flip card, like you absolutely need it for all your fire decks, basically. Misty, so like coin flips there are a lot of good coin flip cards in the game. If every card felt like Marowak or somewhat like Marowak, then I would suggest bringing in some support cards or trainer card, like any trainer card that helps, or any card in the game that could help and support the coin flipping effect. I would say bring it in if they weren't doing so well, but they're actually doing really good. So if you think about all the top coin flip cards, right? Like I just said, Misty and Moltres, Lickilicky, Exeggutor, and Celebi, like they're all like doing really well. So I don't think we need any support for it, but this deck is super strong. If we get support in the next mini set or the next set after, and the reason I say this is go look up a card called Victini. I think it's called Victory Star or Victory something ability on the Victini. It's insane. It allows you to reflip the coins if you don't like the results. So anyways, it's insane. But so I definitely think an ability on a card will come out like that at some point. But pretty cool that Lickilicky made it to a top. It made it to 2 tops in the same week. I wonder if this will continue, if this will trend, if people will pick this up. They'll if they'll make some modifications to the deck, because you see a lot of 1-ofs in this deck, and I wonder if like maybe we should be playing some double ups. I don't know, but only time will tell. So let's get into our last deck here, I believe. And it is, believe it or not, an 18 trainer, and it's Pachirisu 18 trainer. And of course, it's playing 4 tool cards, 2 Rocky Helmet, 2 Giant Cape. Now, the majority of these decks that are playing Pachirisu and an 18 trainer, I usually see 5 or 6 tool cards. This version that made a top in a recent tournament only played 4. I don't know if I agree with, but what I do agree with is maybe they did need the space for something like blue. So blue and potions are super important in this deck, because you really want to make sure you're not getting knocked out. These Pokemon only have 120 HP. Even with a Giant Cape, only 140. You really do need to be able to stop your opponents from knocking you out, and you need all the cards that you can possibly have to allow that to happen. Now, they are playing 4 Gust cards, which probably makes a lot of sense too, because this deck is so aggressive. You automatically start with it. You're more than likely going to get at least 1 item card. It's a 20 card deck. You have 4 item cards. You start with 5 cards in your hand basically, which is a fourth of your deck. So you have at least a 25% chance of starting with an item card. Even higher actually, because you start with 5 cards in your hand. So you increase your chances like insane. I can't do the math in my head, but you start with 5 cards, which is a fourth of your deck, and a fourth of your deck is item cards. Put it that way. Or tool cards. I keep calling them item cards. Every time I try to talk about tools, I just say items. Tool card. My bad. But super duper strong, and this clearly replaced Articuno 18 trainer, and not only that, it's doing way better than Articuno 18 trainer has ever done. So in tournament play, 55% win rate. That is huge. That is huge for an 18 trainer card deck. It does have a very low play rate, but it has enough people have played it that it's not just 1 or 2 players. And overall, in all the tournaments it's been played in, a 55% win rate for Pachirisu 18 trainer seems kind of insane. And this week it got only 5th place is the highest placement for this week, but it has won tournaments. They're very low tournaments. They're not like 250 or more, but that's crazy. And then in a 250 or more person tournament to get 5th place with an 18 trainer and overall be 55%, to me, that is absolutely kind of nuts, but I absolutely love it. But anyways, that was the 10 decks we wanted to look at this week. The Magnezone Hitmonlee, the Exeggutor Celebi, the Pachirisu 18 Trainer, Garchomp, the Starmie Magnezone, the Lickilicky, the Venusaur Shaman, the Lucario deck, the Volkner deck, and the Gallade deck. So again, next week we're going to really start to focus in on what the actual meta looks like. It'll be 3 weeks in, 3 weeks worth of tournaments. We saw all the top decks in the first week. We saw which ones carried over, which ones didn't to this week, which new decks we had. So now I think at the end of the 3rd week is really when we can tell which decks are actually the best decks in the game. And I'll be doing a full-on top 10 decks of the week, like a true top 10 decks of the week with the tournament winners, how many tournaments each deck is winning, as well as all the pie charts really showing us and breaking down everything we want to see, the win rates and the play rates of all the best decks in the game, and to try to figure out why certain decks are as good as they are. But anyways, with that being said, thank you for watching. Leave a comment in the comment section below. Like, subscribe, and share. Join my Discord and Twitter if you feel like doing so. It would really help me out a lot. And as always, keep cooking.